Hello, my name is Alicia Shapiro with AInews.com, and welcome to another episode of our Driving Tomorrow, Conversations with Industry Leaders, where we explore the real-world impact of artificial intelligence across industries. Today, I'm joined by Peter Sloterdyk, Chief Marketing Officer of GIST. Peter has spent more than 2 decades building brands across technology, media, and consumer platforms with leadership experience at companies including Netflix, Grindr, and Koala. At GIST, Peter is focused on one of the biggest changes in digital marketing, how brands, publishers, and creators can stay visible as discovery moves from search results and website clicks to AI-generated answers. That work brings together 2 sides of the same challenge. Their parent company, ProRata, is focused on attribution technology designed to help publishers and creators receive their fair credit and compensation when their content is used in AI environments. And GIST, which grew out of ProRata, helps brands and publishers understand how they appear in AI-generated answers, connect with audience, and create new opportunities for visibility and revenue. In today's conversation, we're going to look at how AI is reshaping brand discovery, why marketers need to think beyond traditional SEO, and how publishers can keep audiences engaged while protecting attribution and monetization in an AI-driven search environment. So thank you for joining us today, Peter.
Thank you so much for having me, Alicia. I really appreciate it.
So marketing has already gone through a lot of major changes over the past 10, 12 years with the dawn of search engines, social media, the smartphones coming into play, and automated digital advertising. But for anyone who is still trying to understand what's exactly changing now, how would you describe that shift from traditional search to AI discovery, and what makes this moment different for brands and marketers?
Sure. It's a big question with, I think, probably 75 different answers, depending on which perspective you're coming from. I do want to set the stage as we talk about this to say that we're separating AI enablement from AI visibility. And AI enablement is the tools that we can now use to move faster, to move more effectively, to be more efficient in our time and our effort and multiply our output. Those are all fantastic tools based in AI, but focused on enablement. You and I are here today to talk specifically about visibility in AI and what that transition looks like. Discovery was so focused on keyword to click, right? We all were optimizing our content, our websites, our advertising, our marketing, all specifically towards a keyword or a set of keywords, a group of keywords. And we were doing things like negative keywords, positive keywords, all of the things that we talked about in SEO, which, by the way, still stand today with still a practice that is required and necessary in our overall marketing spectrum. But we've added a new member to the party. We've invited somebody else to the table. And that's what we call generative engine optimization. This discovery looks so different today because it's based in conversation, not keywords, right? We're talking about questions, not keywords, is a phrase that I use quite frequently. And that means that context, sentiment, and so much more information is being processed than a single keyword and how your content connects to that keyword. Now it's how do you show up against a question? How do you show up against a subject, a category, a product idea? All of those things we're talking Wild West in some ways, but it's not completely unfathomable because it's so natural. We talk about natural language conversations, and that's what the LLMs are inviting us to do, is operate in natural language and expect a natural language response. Our brands have to show up differently in a natural language response than we did in links and in content-based experiences with relations to keywords.
And I've heard it said too that, and actually I think Bill Gross from ProRata,
our founder,
company, he mentioned that when people are asking questions, they're using full sentences now. And there's so much context and so many, I guess, intent that the AI can draw from those complete sentences versus just 2 or 3 words. And so it's much easier for the AI models to then give you the correct answer because it knows more about what you're looking for.
So it's interesting, you say so much more opportunity for it to give you the correct answer. That part is true. It's also an equal and opposite situation where there's as much opportunity for it to give you the wrong answer. And what I mean by that is when we think about optimizing a brand's visibility in AI, if you think about a dinner conversation, you've got the one person at the table who is asking a lot of yes or no questions. Should I, can't I, will I, won't I? Then you have the next person who's asking really high explanation questions, right? They've got a whole paragraph of explanation before they get to the question mark. That person who's really high context, who wants you to understand exactly where they're coming from. You've got 35 different caveats so that you're not offended by the question and all of that jazz. Yeah. So that person is getting a very different answer in AI than the yes or no question person. And then you've got a bunch of people on the middle of the spectrum between those two people. We as brand marketers now have to operate in a world where we're trying to optimize against all versions of the question. Right. The yes or no answer, the high context answer, the low context answer, the mid context answer. And that is really challenging because we're looking at a bunch of different ways to get to an answer. And so when I talk about the equal and opposite, yes, it's much easier for the LLMs to answer it correctly. But when I say answer it incorrectly, I mean, you might ask a question that is all about what restaurant should I eat dinner at tonight? If you say, I'm in the mood for Italian, what restaurant should I eat? Or I'm in the mood for Greek, then you're going to get a more specific answer. But if you just say, what should I have for dinner tonight? The LLM doesn't know if you're asking to go out, if you're asking for a recipe, if you're asking to cook. And so that's where the conversation element comes back in. And we start questioning as brand marketers, where do we show up in some of those answers?
I see. That's interesting. I didn't even think about that, but that's true. Yeah.
Couldn't be more complicated.
That's all right. That's what we got to deal with.
Indeed.
So just describes brand visibility as a brand's measurable presence and influence within AI generated answers and recommendations. Why should CMOs and business leaders treat AI visibility as a business priority and not just another marketing tactic?
Sure. One of my favorite opportunities that has been created right now in this kind of new environment of GEO or new practice of GEO is that legacy brands, as is often the case, right? When you've got a giant cruise ship, turning that cruise ship is real hard. Making it take a left, making it take a right. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of manpower, et cetera, a lot of decision-making prowess. And so they move a little bit slower. The challenger brands who are smaller, nimble, more easily able to move have a really interesting opportunity right now because visibility is anyone's game today. The LLMs don't really care that your legacy brand who has 200 years of brand awareness and all of that jazz to pull on. It cares how people feel about your brand, how they're talking about it, what content they're able to pull from. One of the funny technical things that we've all started to realize is that a lot of us had blockers on our websites to prevent the crawlers from various environments to pull our content. Those are now in the way of LLMs pulling our content. And so there's this technical aspect, then there's the content aspect, and there's the sentiment aspect, a lot of building blocks involved here. And so I think for me, when thinking about the opportunity, the CMOs, the board members, the leaders of businesses have to care about the macro right now, that we're doing something. Not that we're getting everything right today, not that we have all the answers, not that everything is solved, but that we are moving in this space. We're trying things, we're experimenting, we're seeing, even just getting a baseline, right? The starting point. Where do we stand today? What is our visibility score? Those are the building blocks that the CMOs and the marketing leaders, and by the way, every marketer, not just the leaders, need to put in place right now if they're going to take advantage of the sort of very blank space that is available to us right now.
Yeah. When I do talk with small businesses and they're wondering about like how much effort they should put or money or whatever, I always tell them like, but if you start now, you're ahead of your competitors. And because not everybody's doing it. Some of the smaller businesses don't even know this is happening. So if your business can get out in front of it and start refining your tactics and refining your procedures, then you're going to have it all settled and nailed down by the time your competitors 100%. Are just starting.
Yeah. Assumptions are really dangerous in this moment, right? The assumptions like our competitors have already done it, so there's no reason for us to do it. That's probably not true. Or AI is not going to really be a thing. So it's going to be like the metaverse. I don't know that it is like the metaverse. We're talking about a seismic shift, not the introduction of a new world, right?
Yeah.
And so those are different concepts. I think assumptions are really problematic. We're all starting from zero here, right? Everyone. I don't care if you are at Clorox or if you are at brand new bleach available on Amazon today, right? No matter where you are in the spectrum, everybody's starting from zero. None of us have all the answers. I work for an AI visibility company and I don't have all the answers. And so I might have more than the general human, but I don't have all of them. We're figuring it out together.
Yeah, that's what I love about that, because even the SEO people are still trying to figure it out too.
Oh my gosh,
It's not
absolutely.
like anyone's got a head start.
100%.
And speaking of SEO, like we were talking about earlier, traditional SEO is focused on the keywords and the rankings and the clicks and the but now people are asking AI tools full questions instead of typing 2 or 3 words into the search bar, like we mentioned. How does that change the way marketers should think about being discovered online? And is there something they can start doing today?
Top level queries and the answers to those questions in content form.
Okay.
It's really basic. Take the top 10 questions that you want to be in the answer for. I think a lot of us are trying to do one step before that to say, what are the questions? No, you, the marketer, own the answer to that question, right?
Yeah.
What are the questions is what do you want the questions to be? What are the questions that people are asking? Now, there's a couple different ways to discover, right? Through paid media, you can do with us, through Gist, you could do sponsored questions, for example, to understand if your consumers are asking those particular questions. You can understand how frequently they are. That's one input, but really just the generic starting point of what kinds of questions do I want to show up for? Then you do your own audit before you even go to the LLMs. Do your own audit. Do we have content that answers those questions? Do we have anything, a blog, a social post, a YouTube video, content on our website, an explainer video, anything? Do we have the answers in content form to those questions? If the answer is no, go make the content immediately. That's the number one thing you can do. Then you can check your work, right? Meaning put those questions that you've selected into the LLMs, into all of them, by the way. At least pick the big 5, and you'll see a difference in all 5 of them.
Yeah.
See how and when either you or your competitors show up. Get some understanding of what that looks like. Or conversely, see that there's no brands in that answer. It's a complete blank slate. We have a bunch of opportunity there. And again, build as much content as you can to answer those questions. And then the last thing, little trick I'll give, is start looking at the suggested next steps from the LLMs, right? So you get the answer to the question, and then usually most LLMs will say, and if you want me to do this next, I can answer these sorts of things, or I can provide X, Y, and Z. See what that is. Do you have content that answers that information? Is it connected? Are you going all the way through the experience? And a tool like ours, or several that are on the market, like a Just GEO product, can give you that information pretty upfront and pretty quickly.
I love that tip. I never even thought to do that, to check the follow-up questions. That's a great idea.
Glad I could be helpful.
Yeah. And a lot of marketing dashboards show companies what customers did in the past. That's typically the information that the dashboards show. But AI discovery is going to start reveal what people are asking right now. So how should marketers use those longer AI questions to better understand what customers want and where they are in that buying journey?
It's the beginning of insights, right? It's the piece of information that so many of us got from first party research when you would go do a home study and talk to me about how you use our product, or do you use our product, a competitor. These questions, these kind of organic starting points for consumers, are gold for us as marketers.
Yeah.
Not only do they tell us a little bit about the consumer state of mind, but they tell us a great deal about what are they looking to solve. I sometimes use a very kind of pedantic example, which is glue has a lot of applications, right? So Elmer's glue, right? Just at the very beginning. You might be using it to construct a project. You might be using it to adhere something. You might be using it to do a school project and make a sticky ball, or there's a bunch of different ways that you can use glue. Learn more about how consumers are showing up saying, what are the uses of glue? Is that a question they're asking? Or are they saying, how do I use glue to accomplish X? Or are they asking, what can I use to accomplish X? And the answer is glue. There's so many different ways to get into that. And so I really think this playground of figuring out exactly what the consumers are feeling, thinking, experiencing at any particular given time starts to be really powerful insights for us in terms of our content development, what kinds of campaigns we might want to run. They could be the starting insight for the next Super Bowl campaign, potentially, depending on how powerful that insight feels.
Yeah, I love that idea. And what I think that's neat is AI has given marketers this ability to have that insight of what customers are actually thinking about and asking about right now. Whereas before, we just had to guess or make assumptions, and now we can know. So it's exciting. We actually get the real information.
You're totally right. And I don't mean to overly plug, but there's two right now within our ecosystem, there's two ways to get there, right? So there's the GEO product, but then on the ad side, I mentioned before, we have these sponsored questions opportunities, and they're in a couple of different places. We can talk about that another time. But the idea behind it is that you can learn what questions are resonating with your consumers and what are they seeking the answer to, right? It's almost like the preamble to what they might end up going to do in the LLMs. That insight is so powerful and it can influence a great deal about your business.
I love that. And one of the ideas behind the GIST GEO is helping systems understand and cite and recommend a brand more accurately. What does it mean to actually teach AI about a brand, and how is that different from just simply optimizing a website for search?
Sure. That is, we're getting into the technical world, which is not a bad thing. I will admit the limits of my knowledge, right? There are product people who know so much more than I do. I know a little bit, and I will answer as I can. But we're reaching that technical point where there's the deep, dark coding side of things of like, how do I train AI? How do I make sure that my content is showing up in the training data versus the overall answer data? There's a difference between the two. And that training data is where we all want to be, but it has a cutoff date, right? And so I follow a couple of different folks on Instagram that give AI tips and tricks and talk about things. And one that I really liked the other day was add to your Claude instructions, your omnipresent instructions, to tell you when the answer might be old because it's based on their training cutoff date. And I was like, oh, honestly, it never dawned on me that I would need to care about the LLM's training cutoff date. And when was the last time they did a training update? Every LLM does it differently, and they all have different cadences for this. But that training data is a time-boxed set of information. And so training the AI to understand your brand, what you do, what problems you solve, et cetera, can be accomplished in that way. But it can also be accomplished in the way that consumers or users are engaging with the LLMs, right? The back and forth, the seeking to understand X, Y, and Z problems, challenges, issues. If you think about a how-to guide, specifically like a how-to guide, I'm going to use IKEA as an example.
Okay.
So IKEA's some of their top search content in the previous world was all about like, how do I build this thing, or how do I build this faster, or how to, so on and so forth. A lot of how-to content. Now, if you bring that to the LLMs, they're starting to learn that the searchers, the users, are looking to solve a particular problem in the how-to space with relationship to IKEA. So then the crawlers are going back to IKEA being like, what can you tell me about how-to? How do I get to that content? They're going to YouTube and crawling for how-to content, etc. That relationship is ongoing. It's a long game, very similar to SEO. This is not an overnight solution. We're not changing things immediately. It is a long game of building your relationship with the LLMs, your brand's relationship with the LLMs, so that they can really start to understand you better. But there's nuances and changes as that relationship progresses. You might start with how-to content, and then you get into how do I build on top of my IKEA experience? What can complement my IKEA experience? So on and so forth. And so you have to think about that relationship growing over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. So GIST GEO also looks at signals like the citation rate, the share of recommendations, the sentiment, placement, share of voice. Why are these metrics important for marketers to pay attention to, and what are some that may be more important than others at this stage?
Yeah. So share of answer, share of voice is something that I think is really directionally helpful. I will admit that I don't see it as the most actionable of data points. It is one of the more informative data points that we have, because it gives you, again, that baseline understanding of, okay, where do I stand today? If I'm making up X% of the share of answer, all right, I'm doing okay, or I have a lot of opportunity there. It helps inform some of the next steps, but it's difficult to take it from one step to action specifically. The other things mentions question augmentation, right? So what versions of questions are important, that sort of thing. All of that is really actionable because, again, it relates specifically to the kinds of content that you can create to answer those questions. I think for me, what our product does a little bit differently than some of the others on the market is the very, sometimes too, specific recommendations of how to build the content that we're talking about, what it should be, what it needs to cover, what format it might need to be in, where does it live, how do you publish it, how do you promote it, all of those pieces of the puzzle. Instead of it being, you should have content related to this question, Okay, helpful recommendation. That's a good starting point. But what kind of content? Are we talking video? Are we talking written? Where should it live? On my website, on social? Do I need to get a PR partner to start pitching it out on my behalf so that it's living out in the high authority publications, so on and so forth? So we get really specific about how, when, where, and what the content recommendations and how they come to life should be.
I like that. And I think it's important to let people know that you can't just set these things and forget them.
No.
The LLMs are constantly updating and changing,
Yes.
and what works today may not work in a couple of months. And so you kind of need to always just check where you are and adjust as you go along.
I always make the joke that every time I have a conversation like I am with you, Alicia, if we did this in a week, my answers might be different, right? There's a real world in which this content isn't going to live very long in accuracy. This answer to your question might look very different 2 weeks from now.
Right.
It changes fast. Yeah.
It does. And that's another thing that keeps marketers on their toes.
And you know what? We felt the same way about social. We felt the same way about traditional search. We have long felt the same way about any version of media, right? It all has shifted and adjusted and changed and been amorphous in a particular time period. So I do think marketers are particularly well suited to this level and style of change. The pace might be new, right? The pace at which we are moving feels a little bit faster than anything we've done before, in my experience. 20 years in, we'll see how long I last at this pace. It's so fast. But I do think we're well suited to meet the moment.
Yeah. And for publishers, AI generated answers kind of can create a real tension. Audiences want fast answers, but the publishers still need the engagement, the attribution, the revenue, the clicks.
Yeah.
So how can tools like Just Answers help publishers capture more of that value without fighting the way that audiences now consume information?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question. ProRata, our parent company, has the largest licensed content network in AI. And we have over 1,000 publisher partners, several thousand titles that are participating in our licensed content network for a couple of different reasons. You've just mentioned several of them, right? We're talking about credit and compensation, where credit and compensation is due. We're talking about increased engagement in this zero-click world, right? There's a conflict there between engagement being wildly important and us moving towards a zero-click world. And what we mean by zero-click is that because we're moving away from the blue links in the old traditional search environment, now we're moving towards that conversation. It doesn't feel as necessary for a consumer to click the link, to go to the next location, because I got my answer. There it is. I'm good to go. Just Answers was built specifically for that. It uses the licensed content network, or specifically the content of the publisher, that has implemented Just Answers in their environment. And what it does is capitalizes on their engaged traffic, the users that are already engaged in their environment, and it keeps them further engaged, more engaged in their environment. And so what Just Answers is specifically bringing to the table for these publishers is a closed search environment, an AI conversational search environment that lives, it's a white label product that lives directly within the publisher's website, and is a way for any user to ask questions about the content, to ask questions about the world. It's really great for digging deeper, for going further. What else can you tell me about this particular topic? And there's opportunities for revenue in there because there's advertising space available in the Just Answers unit. And it, one more time, does increase engagement because people are more likely to stay on the page and spend a bit more time with the content. I think for me, the Just Answers product is one of those, it feels very basic and necessary, and basic in a good way. It should be there. It is a great answer for publishers to the AI world where, you know, if our content's going to live this way, we deserve a chance to reclaim the opportunity and reclaim the traffic where possible.
Yeah, I like that. Traditional keyword-based advertising is built around matching ads to search terms, but Just Ads are focusing on helping brands appear in the relevant AI-powered experiences, search and other premium publisher environments. Yep. So how do you see advertising changing as more consumer decisions are beginning inside those AI-generated answers?
Yeah. So I think one of the things we keep questioning as a marketing community is what has happened to the consumer journey now that AI is either the starting or sometimes the ending point of the discovery process. And we don't have the answer to that question yet. I do think it's a worthy discussion to be talking about how has the journey been impacted. But from my point of view, and when we're thinking about just ads, what we're talking about is reaching the consumer in different ways, right? We've got to take a slightly different approach to how we're going to get our message, our being the advertiser, our message to our target audience. We talked about this a little bit before, but questions is the new currency, right? We are using questions. And I think what we're going to find is, and I've been coining this term, I got to tell you, I'm still playing around with it because it feels a little funky, but I think we're moving into the question and answers economy. I think we're moving into the Q&A economy. And I think that's the Forbes headline, as it were. That's what I see happening because the value exchange is now, consumers are now tied to a value exchange of questions and answers. And so our phrase here is you get the chance to folks who work with us, brands who work with us, publishers who work with us, you get to own the conversation from question to answer. Because whether we're talking about the generative engine optimization, the just answers experience that we just went through, or the advertising experience where you can, as a brand, take advantage of understanding which questions are resonating with your audience and what are they looking for from you through a paid advertising lens, I think is a really powerful next step. So we've got a couple of things coming in the next few weeks. I wish I could reveal everything now, but a couple of things coming in the next few weeks that I think are really going to change the game in terms of that predictable volume-based advertising that we as advertisers are also used to, marketers are so used to, but it is going to have to take a slightly different approach in this new world order.
I'm excited now. Let's see what it is.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. And what's one thing, if you had to give one piece of advice to marketers today, what's one piece of advice you give them?
Oh gosh, stay curious.
Okay.
You do not need to have all the answers. I think oftentimes we find ourselves, no matter what level of marketer you are in a particular organization, we find ourselves in conversations where a lot of folks are looking at us. Hey, what's the answer to this question? Where's the data? Where's the information? Where's the answer? And I have found in my career, and I think it's still true, that it is a perfectly reasonable answer to say, I don't know. I don't know yet. I'm going to find out. I would love to know the answer to that question, but I don't know. And if you stay curious in your environment, in your practice, in the world that we're operating in, I think that's a much stronger recipe for success than showing up or feeling like you need to know everything.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. Before we wrap up, I always love to ask, when you do step away from your work, what are some activities or hobbies you're passionate about?
Oh, you're very kind to ask. I went to school for music. So music is a huge part of my life. I'm a musical theater composer. I play the piano and I sing. So whenever I have a free moment, I like to spend my time at the piano, writing new songs and spending as much time in that creative pursuit as I can.
How fun is that? I love that.
It's a blast. I'm very lucky.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for joining me today. I just really appreciate how you explained AI discoverability is just not changing how brands are found. It's understanding the customer intent and how trust is built across the digital ecosystem. So I really appreciate your insights today.
Thank you so much for the time. It was a really great conversation. I'm glad I got to do it.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much. And for those of you who'd like to learn more about Gist, you can visit their website, gist.ai. Keeping you connected to tomorrow. Today, this is Alicia with AInews.com.